The year is 1788. The Spanish Empire is in sharp decline. King Carlos III has died and is succeeded by his son, Carlos IV. Honest but incompetent, a new era for Spain is about to begin. This is the third episode of the Rise and Fall of the World's Greatest Empires, a series in which we explore how empires grow, change, and eventually collapse. And this will be the last episode to cover the Spanish Empire at its peak, because there is no hiding it any longer. Spain is in steep decline. During Carlos III's rule, he managed to introduce some reforms that slowed the rate at which the empire was falling apart. But now that he's dead, it's going to take a massive shock to get Spain out of this downward spiral. Well, they're about to get one. In 1789, the French Revolution breaks out. This will have major consequences for Spain, not only because it will cause chaos all over Europe, but also because the ruling Bourbon dynasty of Spain, the same family that rules over France, will be caught in the crossfire. Let's zoom into France. We've done videos about the French Revolution before, so we know what's coming. King Louis XVI is a weak leader, and the country is in serious financial trouble. The revolutionaries storm the Bastille, and the king is executed. France becomes a republic. Now let's zoom back out. As the chaos in France unfolds, an even greater threat emerges. Napoleon Bonaparte, who is a general in the French army, launches a coup d'etat and takes control of the government. He crowns himself emperor and sets his sights on conquering Europe. So far, none of this has anything to do with Spain, but soon it will. Napoleon's first target is northern Spain and Portugal. These two small kingdoms are ruled by the same dynasty as Spain, making them part of the same ruling Bourbon family tree. And despite their size, these two kingdoms are actually quite wealthy. They have more gold and silver than even France. Napoleon sends his army into Spain to force the Portuguese king to pay a hefty war contribution. But the Portuguese don't comply, and the French are forced to invade. This is the beginning of the Peninsular War, which will be the longest and most brutal theater of war in Napoleon's entire empire. It will also prove to be the war that will break Napoleon and bring an end to his reign. But more on that later. For now, let's focus on Spain. When the French invaded northern Spain, the Spanish people were outraged. They were shocked by the audacity of Napoleon and his troops. The people rose up against the French, fighting house to house and street to street. These early engagements went poorly for the Spanish army. They were inexperienced and had not prepared for the invasion. The French, meanwhile, were battle-hardened veterans from years of fighting the Austrians and the rest of Europe. As the Spanish army suffered defeat after defeat, the Spanish leadership realized that they needed help from their allies. So they turned to Britain. The British were eager to help, because they saw the war in Spain as an opportunity to strike a fatal blow to Napoleon and end his threat once and for all. In 1808, the British began sending troops to aid the Spanish. These troops were led by Sir Arthur Wellesley, later known as the Duke of Wellington. With the help of the British and Portuguese, the Spanish people were able to launch a counter-offensive and push the French back across the border. Despite these victories, however, the war was far from over. The French would return again and again, each time with even more troops than before. The Spanish people were exhausted from years of fighting, and it seemed as if they might finally be defeated. But then, something remarkable happened. The Spanish people, along with the British and Portuguese, regrouped and launched a final counter-offensive. Under the leadership of Wellington, the Allied forces defeated Napoleon's army at the Battle of Salamanca in 1812. This victory marked the beginning of the end for Napoleon's empire. From here, the Allied forces marched into France itself and forced Napoleon to abdicate. While this was going on, things in Spain were far from settled. Throughout the war, many Spaniards had grown tired of being ruled by a Bourbon monarch. They wanted more power for themselves. In response, the Spanish Cortes met in 1810. This assembly represented the Spanish colonies in America and Western Europe. Together, they would draft a constitution for Spain that established a limited monarchy and granted more power to the people. Unfortunately, this new constitution was never accepted by the Spanish people. The Spanish monarchy refused to sign it, and the Spanish people were too exhausted from the war to fight for it. Instead, they simply wanted peace and stability. With Napoleon defeated, the Spanish monarchy was restored, and Spain emerged from the Napoleonic Wars as a much weaker nation. It may seem as if we're being a little harsh on the Spanish people. After all, they won the war, and Napoleon is gone. But the cost of winning this war was enormous. The war dragged on for years and resulted in hundreds of thousands of deaths. The Spanish economy was devastated and the country was left in ruins. This war basically destroyed any remaining wealth that Spain had acquired during the Age of Discovery. But it wasn't just the war that weakened Spain, it was also the revolution in their colonies. While the Spanish people were fighting the French, the people in their American colonies were fighting the Spanish. The result was the same everywhere. Spain was simply too weak to hold on to its empire. But why were the colonies rebelling? What was going on in America in 1810? Well, a lot of it has to do with the fact that the Spanish colonies in America were very far away from Spain itself. As a result, they developed a strong sense of autonomy. They were essentially allowed to govern themselves. They had their own local governments, and they were able to make their own laws. They didn't really need Spain. However, when the Spanish monarchy tried to tighten its grip on the colonies, the people rebelled. They did not want to be ruled by a distant monarchy. They wanted more power for themselves. Unfortunately for them, the Spanish monarchy was too powerful to be overthrown. But that doesn't mean that the people in the colonies stopped trying. In fact, they fought a number of wars against the Spanish monarchy. The most successful of these wars was the Haitian Revolution. This was a full-blown war of independence waged by the people of Haiti against the Spanish rule. It lasted from 1791 to 1804 and resulted in the creation of the first independent black republic in the world. Unfortunately, the Haitian Revolution was the exception rather than the norm. Most of the Spanish colonies remained under Spanish rule until the mid-19th century. However, this was only due to the weakness of Spain. If Spain had been a stronger country, it is likely that they would have been able to hold on to their colonies for much longer. So there you have it. That is how the Spanish Empire fell. It wasn't just one big event, but a series of smaller events that took place over a period of several decades. The war with France, the revolution in their colonies, the loss of their overseas territories. All of these events contributed to the decline and fall of the Spanish Empire. Next time, we'll cover the end of the Dutch Empire, which is a story you won't want to miss. Also, if you enjoy learning about history, be sure to check out our podcast. Every week we publish a new episode covering a variety of historical topics. Thanks for watching.